All right, we're going to get started right on time. Just got the word from a member that everyone can hear us, which is good. So welcome everybody. I think we're going to keep getting some participants. I know 30 plus are on now and expecting a pretty good crowd. It's a treat to have Brian Schneider and Blake Conan with us tonight to kind of walk us through the first phase of the project that has been done. Talk a little bit about a history of Lanark, some great stuff that Brian has. And then get onto the other side of the property and some of his plans for that. So the way this is going to work, we have sort of a small panel here, which is Brendan Byrne, in addition to Brian and Blake and Tom Castaldi and Dick Atkinson from the Greens Committee are on. And really, Brian's going to take it and he's going to talk through about 4 or 5 holes at a time. And then everybody that has any questions, if you go down to the bottom of your screen and go to the Q&A section, you will be able to ask some questions. And we're gonna, I'm sure we're gonna get a lot. We're gonna try to get through as many as we can, but we're gonna kind of pause after about 4 or 5 holes so that we can ask Brian some of the questions about those holes. Or if you have any questions for myself or Brendan, certainly feel free to ask, and then we'll try to kind of pause, like I said, after each little segment to try to break it up with some questions and then wrap it up that way as well. So having said that, welcome Brian and Blake, and we'll turn it over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Chris, and welcome everyone. I hope you're all doing well and happy to have your golf course back. I'm jealous. I hope you're all enjoying it so far. So let's spend a little time talking about what we did. I'm going to start with a little bit of a history lesson about your golf course for those of you that don't know it all that well. This is essentially what we had when we started our work last October with a few more trees. But this is where you were a year or two ago. Golf course has changed a lot over the years. Golf was played on your site since around 1895, making it one of, if not the oldest golf courses in Philadelphia on its original site. Lanark wasn't founded until 1919 as a club. Previous to that, for the first couple decades, y'all operated as the Delaware Country Club, I believe, Delaware Field Club, Bon Air Country Club. 1919. You became Lanark Country Club. You can see in this picture, compared to the old picture, space up behind the clubhouse and to the right of number 5 used to have a lot of golf in it. The original golf course was built in 1922 by a guy named Alexander Finlay Scott, who laid out a lot of golf courses. Shortly after the turn of the century, that golf course opened in 1924. He had inherited golf on the property and kept some of the holes, but also adding others and expanding others. That was 18 holes. In 1939, club was doing well, purchased a little bit of extra land, and retained Finlay to expand the golf course to the 27 holes that you see in this picture right here. The new holes that he added at the time, the current 6th, 7th, 11th, 12th through 15th. In 1946, here's the 27-hole routing. So you can see what's been lost. Essentially everything in the blue lines has been changed or lost over the years. Everything in red and yellow is pretty much the same way it is right now. One more look at the routing, early routing. And at this point, after 1946, the club was in a bit of financial trouble and decided to sell off some land. So you can see the area to the right of your current 5th hole. Space behind the clubhouse looks like it was a little pitch and putt, a short course for a while. Eventually, some of that was sold off. The golf course was changed by a guy named J.B. McGovern, who some of you have probably heard of. Donald Ross, one of the great American golf course architects, the first half of this century, the first half of the last century. J.B. McGovern worked for Mr. Ross. It's kind of his right-hand man on a lot of his projects and got some of his own work after Mr. Ross either got too busy or retired. So J.B. McGovern was hired to change the golf course back from 27 to 18 holes. And that's very much the golf course you had just a couple of years ago. You know, bunkers had been shifting around a little bit. Trees had grown in, obviously, but the routing that McGovern left in 1946 is essentially what you've been playing for a really long time. So this is what we were given a couple of years ago. I don't know if anybody has any questions about the history of the golf course before I move on to the work we decided to do for you all last year.
Doesn't look like any questions at the moment, so let's keep going.
I must have explained that brilliantly.
Yeah.
So here's where we started last year, the clubhouse side of the road. And for a variety of reasons, primarily because we were going to rebuild the green on the 8th hole. So this is what your 8th hole looked like before we started. Obviously, we cleared out a few trees on the right-hand side of this picture, shift the tees over to the right. And one of the primary goals of the work we did to this hole was bring this cool little stream into play. You can see in this aerial how detached the golf hole was from play at all, really. We wanted to make that a part of the golf hole. Here's the old hole. Again, you can see how detached it was from the stream. So that was one of the first things we focused on. I've never been to this golf course. It's called West Sussex. It's in a place called Pulborough in England, but this is a pretty famous golf hole from West Sussex. This is their 6th hole, long par 3. And this hole popped into my head when I was thinking of your golf hole. Long hole, play across a pond off the tee. And I knew what I wanted to do behind this hole was to remove the old 9th tees. It always bothered me that when you were playing the 8th hole, you had big blocks sticking up in the air that were the 9th tees. So I wanted to get rid of that material. The place I thought to put it was short and left of the hole to resemble this hole at West Sussex. In doing so, we were going to shift the fairway over to the right, like I mentioned, to bring the stream into play. So we'd add the big hill here to encourage play out to the right around that big hill, bringing this stream into play. So it's a long enough hole, some people can't reach that hole in one shot. If they are laying up, that, you know, it's to their best advantage to play over to this right-hand side, closer to the stream to play in around the hill. So that's where we started from. You can see how much that fairway changed. This was the first paint line we did before we started stripping the old turf off. So everything to the left of this exposed soil in this picture is the old fairway. And we expanded it that much over to the right. One more picture of how that fairway changed. Everything to the left in this picture has been, or most of what's to the left in this picture has been converted to rough since then. So this is a few weeks into the work. By this point, we hauled out most of the material that used to comprise the old 9th tees and built the hill in the front of the hole. You can see some pictures of the work in progress. You know, we started on the 8th hole because we rebuilt the green. Starting there gave Brendan and his crew as much time as possible to grow in the new green. I hope that's gone well. I trust that the turf is improving gradually. And I ask you all to be patient. Be patient with Brendan and his guys as they grow in that green. That takes a long time for it to play well, but you've got a fantastic guy in charge of that. So that's a construction picture. Here's when everything was grassed. And again, the old hole, what you've got today, pretty dramatic difference. You know, when we started this project, you can see here the 8th hole, bunker front left, bunker front right. If I remember right, let me see. At least 14 of your holes were bunkered that way. Bunker front left, bunker front right. If you include the 17th and 18th holes, you had 16 holes that had bunkers in front right and front left. That's not a whole lot of variety. When you miss a green, 9 times out of 10, you'd be ending up in sand. We wanted to introduce a few different shots around the greens. So that's why we eliminated a lot of the bunkers on this hole. Now, if you miss the green, you could be in rough. Over here, short or to the right of the green. Could be on the hill to the left. You got a bunch of short grass in front, a little bit of short grass behind with some more mounding, a little bunker behind. You've got a lot more variety in the shots that are going to be required as you miss greens on your new golf course. And I hope you all are enjoying that. It's no longer just miss a green and wedge and repeat 16 times. So that was the goal throughout the project. As I alluded to, here's a picture of the 8th hole. The 9th tees drove a lot of the work we did to the 8th hole. So this is pretty early on. We just started relocating some of that material from the 9th tees over to the front left of the 8th hole. You can see at this point, the clearing had been done. I think the tees had been shaped by the fairway is nice and tight to the creek on the right. You all know your 9th and 10th holes.
Yeah. Hey, Brian. Maybe while we're on a few questions coming in about the 9th tee box, that might be a good time to just interrupt right now and do, answer them.
Yeah.
So, some of the questions are, hey, when that hole location is back right, it almost feels like the people teeing off on 9 are in play. And I know Brendan and I talked about this at times where we kind of were leaning towards making the official yardage sort of the front of that back tee box. But it is a good point to maybe, there are times when that whole location is going to be back right that maybe we can use that top tee box. But get your thoughts on that and maybe answer some of those questions on your thinking there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You definitely got some flexibility in where the tees go. Has the hole been back right often, and have there been balls carrying on to the 9th tees from there?
Yeah, I mean, my guess is it's more of a visual intimidation of, there's more room there than it looks. I don't think, we used to say about the old green that back bunker, only need to be raked like once a year because there's just not a lot of people from that distance that are hitting it long. I think it's just the visual of it. It feels like the people teeing off are right on top of the, the flag stick, even though there's probably a good 20 yards there. But it is worth, talking about that when that whole location is back right, that maybe we use that top tee box. I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough, and y'all you have the flexibility to do that.
And the distance from the front of that back tee box is really very similar to the distance of the old back of the old white tee box. Really, it's not a big difference in yardage if it's a couple yards at the most. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, could there have been a different place you could have put the white tee, or I mean, functionally you kind of locked into a little bit of, that was kind of the best place for it, or the
yeah, honestly, I like it right there. I mean, I love how short, how the intimacy of that tee box to the 8th green, I absolutely love. And to your point, Chris, I didn't assume that there'd be many balls going long and right off of 8 tee. We put the bunker behind the green to help mitigate that if balls do roll through the green, that they're not going to roll onto the 9th tees. But that look is intentional. We wanted that to be a scary looking shot, that you felt like that tee and the cliff wall, which we'll get to a little bit in a few minutes, that was right behind that hole location. We want that to be uncomfortable. And I understand that golfers behind there might be a little bit distracting. But I'm comfortable with the safety aspect of it, and I love the proximity of the 9th tees to the 8th green. That was one of the important things we were working on, was kind of squeezing things together as much as we could.
I also want to add too that this is going to be a reoccurring issue on this golf course when you look at like behind 15 to 16 tee, by 13 tee to 14 tee. I mean, it's a small piece of property. There's only so many places you can go, and we lowered number 9 so that we can produce balls going out of bounds and pounding the neighbors' houses. So I think, having looked at number 9T, divots don't lie. I haven't seen any divots on 9T going back to 8 green. So I don't think it's an issue of balls rolling too far onto 9T.
Yeah, Brendan just raised one important point. One of the goals with the 9th tees was to shift them as far right as possible to try to minimize the number of balls that are aiming it out of bounds off the 9th tees. So we were trying to squeeze it as close as we could to the back of the 8th green while still being safe in order to make the 9th tee shot more comfortable and to keep more balls in play. And the other side of that was trying to move the 9th tees as far away from the 10th green as possible so that we could squeeze the cart path in there and also get the 9th tees both out of play on the 10th hole and visually out of the field of vision. And get as far away from the 10th as possible.
Right. And I think to address in the forward tee on number 8, I know there's some questions about the mound shutting down the left side. The problem is,
Looks like
where the
Brian
pond
there for a
is,
second.
you can't move the tee over to the right, the forward tee, because there's the pond. So the more you move it to the right, you're moving it literally into the fairway. So there was limitations on where we could move the forward tee.
I think we're you know, trying to address that a little bit with some of the blended tee options, and one of the choices on the blended tee as we're talking to members was to use the yellow tee as the blended tee option for number 8. Even though it's a longer tee shot, the angle might, you know, it's a pretty long par 3, but the angle might be, you know, more inviting for players, you know. So
And the bottom line,
it's all work in progress and trying to figure some of that stuff out.
it's a difficult golf hole, you know, and it's meant to be. It's hard for everybody. It's hard from the back tees. It's a par 3.5. I don't know what your stroke average is for your membership on that hole, but it's going to be a hard golf hole. And I understand that the angle's difficult from the forward tee. You know, ideally that's mitigated by the shorter distance from that tee, and it's a tough shot from over there. But this is the kind of hole where even better players may not be aiming at the flag all the time. You know, it's a really long, difficult shot, and it's not always the best play to aim directly at the hole if you don't have that shot.
All right. Figured number 8 would have a lot of questions. So
Just one more thing. I know some people ask about the mound, agriculturally speaking, and how it's supposed to play. The fescue is, because of the cold spring, it's taking a long time to grow up. But the idea is for it to play firm, and for the fine fescue, when it grows up, it looks thick from a distance, but you can find your ball and see your feet when it finally grows in. But fescues take a long time to grow in, and we haven't had an ideal growing season in the spring so far. But the idea is for the ball to bounce when it hits that mound. It's not supposed to play soft. We're not going to maintain it soft once the grass gets grown.
Yeah, and the best way to get ideal fine fescue is to grow it in from seed. And that process can take 2 to 3 years before it's ready. But if we were to sod that hill, you'd have a thick, nasty mess that Brendan would be fighting to provide the playability you need. So it's being done the right way, but it does take a couple of years for seeded fescue to get where it needs to be. But it'll be great when it's there.
all right.
Uh,
10.
let's see. So this is what we were trying to do, and let me move on to the 10th briefly. You know, one of my biggest pet peeves with this hole is that the green was surrounded by a box of asphalt. You know, you had cart path tight on the right, cart path tight on the left, cart path beyond the green, even a cart path across the road if you didn't have enough asphalt yet. So one of the major goals is to get this cart path on the left as far away from the green as possible. And because of the way those 3 holes are situated, this is the 8th green right here, 10th green off to the right, which is underneath pictures of Brendan and Blake and Dave online. And the 9th tee sit in the middle. So the cart path for the 10th hole used to run just about through here between these big pieces of machinery. And we were able to shift it way over to the left by shifting the 9th tees over as well. So relocating the 9th tees and the situation of the 9th tees where they are right now is a combination of factors, but that cart path on the left side of the old 10th green was a big part of that. So on to the 10th, I talked about the asphalt. And again, bunker left, bunker right, just like a bunch of his brothers. So one of the goals is to create a little more imbalance in how that hole looked and played, in addition to getting the cart path out of there. So a work in progress. This is the original hole stripped. And as we started, I'll back up a little bit. As we started lowering the 9th tees, you can probably make out all the rock in this picture. This is Blake in the excavator. This is material we were hauling to build the mound in the short left of the 8th hole. We started to hit a lot of rock. And it wasn't a lot of fun getting that rock out of there. And at some point we decided, you know what, let's try something a little different here. Let's introduce this feature. This little cliff wall. So that's where we stopped. There's a bunch of rock underneath this portion of it that extends out into the, out in front of the 10th green a little bit. That was the feature we came up with. We were going to retain the bunker short right of the green. but do something really different on the left side. So you had a different look depending on where the hole location is. There it was, freshly seeded. This is taken from the 9th green, or just at the base of the hill, or I'm sorry, the 8th green, looking over towards 17. And there it's evolving towards what we have today. You can see between these two pictures, this is the old green, which used to extend about out to here. The green's gotten quite a bit bigger. The green ends here. Now we've got a little bit of short grass around the back and the left, as you all know. But we've got a very different look compared to what it used to be. We've lost a lot of that symmetry. You can see the cart path on the left is now virtually out of the picture. We've shifted the cart path on the right a little bit as well. That's your new 10th hole. From there, we moved on to these guys. The Dueling Par 3s, 4 and 17. Starting with number 4, here's how it looked just a couple of years ago before Brendan started plucking out undesirable trees. They're your fescue-edged bunkers that you all love so much. I've always really liked this hole. You know, it has characteristics of what's called a Redan hole, the 15th hole in a place called North Berwick in Scotland. It's a famous par 3, the Redan hole. The hole invites you to play out to the right of the flag, ideally hit a little draw, let the ball land short of the green and run onto the green. And that was always a feature of this hole. The previous version had, I don't know the picture of it. It had bunkers short and right, so that if you did throw your ball out to the right, you know, there was a pretty good chance that you'd get hung up in the bunkers out there. So that was one of the first things we wanted to do, eliminate that bunker, create a lot more space up to the right side, so you could throw your ball out to the right and let it feed on the green if you hit the right shot. There's a bit of the bunker work in progress. That's a great look at all the short grass we had. I think the old approach used to stop right about here. And there used to be a bunker in this area right there. So if you did try that shot, odds are you're going to be caught. So we open that up a little bit. You know, you can't be careless. There's still a bunker back right waiting for you. But you've got a lot more space to land the ball short, especially if you can play a draw and run onto the green and let the slope help you. You know, particularly we've expanded the green considerably. Everything you see in white here is essentially new green. That's your old putting surface in the center with a few strips taken around it. That green's got a lot bigger, as they all have. You know, let me talk a little bit about the look of some of the work we did, both the bunkering and some of the mounding we've done. You can see it here in this aerial, some of these shapes that we added to the left side of the 4th hole and the sharp bank we added on the left side. These pictures are from a place in England called Huntercombe. It's a great old Willey Park golf course. They don't have many bunkers, but they've got a lot of really neat pits and ridges and strange landforms that you don't see all that much in the game. You know, Philadelphia's got a lot of great golf courses, and a bunch of them were designed by William Flynn, and the bunkering style somewhat consistent throughout. So a lot of the best golf courses in the Philadelphia area have flash sand bunkers. You're known for that. We wanted to do something different. We weren't going to make any attempt to out Marion or out Aronimink. Those places have great flash sand bunkers. We want to do something really different with Lander and give you all an identity that separated you from the rest of the best golf in Philadelphia. So we took inspiration from places like this, like Huntercombe, and we decided to add some sharp little edges, some funky mounding, and not overbunker the golf course. You know, there's not a whole lot of sand out there these days. The sand we did build is pretty nasty. Try to substitute some of these lies and funky stances and quirky little things for golf holes.
Ryan, while you're on that topic, your question just came in kind of related to that is why keep the short right bunkers on 4? Which I know you changed, but they in a similar spot to where the old bunker was. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're essentially in the same spot. We changed the look a little bit. You know, it's a visual thing as much as anything. There's good. It's a visual thing as much as anything. You look at that picture, you have little awareness that there's a bunch of short grass out to the right. You know, that little ridge short of the green and the bunkers hides all that short grass. So you know it's out there if you played the golf course once or twice, but you're still a little uncomfortable. So it's just, number one, composition. I think it looks cool to have them there. They're, where we've relocated the forward tee, they shouldn't be a factor for the people that we don't want to be penalizing off the tee on a par 3 that way. So we've tried to mitigate that with the relocation of the forward tee. But it's a visual thing as much as anything. I think.
I mean, Brian, you and Blake were also trying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that you also use some bunkering as framing bunkers to try to frame a hole. Isn't that correct? To kind of give it some definition.
Yeah, I don't use it often, but yeah, it's a composition thing. Just aesthetically, the hole sets up differently with those bunkers in the foreground as opposed to if they weren't there. And, I think hiding that short grass on the right, again, it's out there and it's going to help you, but trusting it when you can't see it is kind of a difficult thing for some people. And it's a fun trick that we like to use as designers and builders to try and trick your eye. There's a lot of safe room out there, but when you can't see it, it's still a little uncomfortable. So.
Especially how you made the bunker behind on number 10 almost feel like it's part of 4.
Yeah, I don't know if you all noticed that, but this bunker behind the green here is actually the right green side bunker on number 10. And if you've hit it in there on the 4th hole, you've hit a pretty lawful shot. But, when the pin is back right on the 4th hole, you feel like you've got a bunker waiting for you long. So hopefully we've gotten in your head a little bit that way. That was something we worked really hard to get right. Blake did a great job on that bunker on number 10. Yeah, I think that's another little visual trick that, when you look at this picture, the right half of this hole looks like there's a whole lot of trouble over there. When in reality, it's pretty wide open and doing a lot to help you get on the green.
And
Brian, could you comment on
in some of those spots where we talked about 9, right behind 8 green, and it's part of the charm of our golf course, I think, and it's part of the character of our places. It's a small piece of property, and some of the most fun days we have on the golf course are whether it's winter golf with big groups, or there's lots of people in a small area, and I think it can be a challenge visually sometimes when you see lots of people around, and there's more space, as you said, than it looks. But I think it is part of the charm of our place specifically.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about it. It's one of the things people talk about at Marion. Aronimink is a massive golf course. Philly Cricket, a lot of people talk about, is a massive golf course. But Marion is a place that people talk about its intimacy and its scale, and you all have that too. And it's something to embrace and be proud of. I think it's really cool that you stand on the 8th tees, or you stand on the 2nd tees, 3rd green, and look down the line. You can see 6 flags in a row. There aren't many places where that's an option. That's a really cool feature of a golf course, and I love how intimate it is, especially on this side of the road. Things open up a little bit across Steel Road, but I love that about this part of the golf course. And we tried everything we could to use as much of the space available as possible. Dave, you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to go back to the mounding that you guys chose to use, because I remember you made it a comment at some point in the past talking about your work with Brooks Koepka, that sand bunkers aren't as challenging to the better players, and how I think one of his fears was being in grass bunkers. I don't know if you just speak on to what that can do for better players or add to the challenge of the course.
Yeah, Dave's alluding to a project that Blake and I both worked on for Tom Doak last year in Houston, Texas. The project is at a municipal golf course called Memorial Park, right in the city. They do 65 or 70,000 rounds a year. It's a factory. Our client there negotiated a deal with the city to renovate the golf course with the intention of hosting the Houston Open beginning this November now. I think it's a week before the Masters, if I'm not mistaken. So they're going to be hosting a tour event on a municipal golf course in the city that does a lot of rounds of golf. So those are 2 difficult Masters to serve at the same time. We were assisted on the project by Brooks Koepka, who spent some time on the property with us. Blake and I got to spend some time walking around with him, picking his brain and just hearing his thoughts and ideas. And, great players like Brooks and the best players at Lanark, or the best clubs in Philly, have little to no fear of greenside bunkers. Brooks obviously is not the average club player, but he's literally trying to make every greenside bunker shot he faces. And I think a lot of your best players at your club are similarly confident. And to his mind, the most difficult shots around the greens are out of the rough from an awkward lie where you're not sure how the ball's going to come out. That's the toughest thing for the best players in the world. And that's a tougher shot for your best players at your club versus a bunker shot. At the same time, high handicap players really struggle with bunker shots. You know, it's one of the most difficult parts of the game for them. It slows up play, it's frustrating, and they have relatively little trouble hitting those shots from the rough onto the green. So we found that to be a great solution in Houston. And, you know, Lanark was one of the first, well, really was the first work that Blake or I did after that project. And I think a lot of what we learned on that project, we applied at Lanark, perhaps even more successfully. So that's why we went some of the mounding and the funky lies, the funky stances. You know, it's the kind of thing that doesn't affect the high handicapper, but really can mess with the head of the better player a little bit.
You know, I was going to ask Brian, I think it's a good opportunity to discuss some of the questions we get with the bunker styling itself. When you look at 4, it's a really good compare contrast because you look at the bunker on number 4, it's got a low slope, ball can get out of it. Most of the lies are flat now, where it used to be very concave. But then there's some people that are concerned, like on number 4, right side, where it's severe and the ball, it puts them in a spot that they maybe not have seen unless they had traveled to Scotland or England or played some of the old Seth Rayners where they have an impeded backswing. How would you describe that philosophy of how you did those bunkers that way and why?
I don't know. You describe it. You tell them to stay out of the bunkers.
Yeah, I know. Well, that does. Yeah, I can only say it to a couple of people. I can say that.
And that's kind of my thought too. You know, I think we've eliminated a lot of your greenside bunkers, and we'll do more of that across the road. You know, you're going to have fewer greenside bunkers, like I was just talking about. But the ones we're building are going to matter a lot more than they used to. You know, if a good player ends up in that bunker right of 4 green, that's going to be a tough shot for him. You know, and you're not always going to have an easy swing at it. You're not always going to have a great lie. And that's what bunkers are meant to do. You know, you're not supposed to have a great lie in every bunker. You're not supposed to have an easy shot out of every bunker. They're supposed to be penalizing, you know, and they're supposed to make the game more interesting. And they're not really interesting if good players can get out of them easily all the time. So we tried to introduce a little bit of uncertainty. We brought luck and bad luck into play more than it used to. You know, I'll come back to this in a second when we talk about 1 and 3. But fewer bunkers, fewer more penal, more critically placed bunkers are a lot more effective than a bunch of bunkers scattered around the golf course that are pretty easy to get out of. So that was our thought. We want them to be mean. We want them to be nasty. We know if you go long on the 8th hole and end up in the bunker, you're going to have a really tough lie. So don't go long on the 8th hole, you know, and don't miss the first green to the right. There's a bunch of room to the left. You flirt with hole locations on the right half of that green, and you're bringing double into play. And that's the idea. Moving on. I love the 8th hole, or the 4th hole. That comes from the drone video that Brendan and his guys took, and I love that picture. Another good look at how much short grass there is out to the right. That was one of my favorite holes coming into the project, and I think it turned out really well. I'm really happy with it. So we went from that to that. We'll go to this, the fantastic little 17th. Always been a cool little hole. I think it was Sam Snead that really admired this hole when he passed through. Tillinghast really enjoyed it. That's a really old picture of your 17th hole. It had changed a little bit over the years. Your 17th was inspired by this hole, the 5th hole on the King's Course at Glen Eagles in Scotland. It's called Het Girdle. Short little par 3, surrounded by trouble, tabletop green. You can see where they got the inspiration. Great picture of it right there. So we were aware of that. We weren't trying to replicate that. We were trying to stick to the inspiration. That's what we came up with. You know, your old hole had symmetrical bunkers a little bit, everything rising almost all the way up the slope. similar shapes and sizes, and we tried to throw a little bit of imbalance in there and mix things up a little bit. Here's part of the process. I'll move quickly through these. Here's a good look at how much bigger the green got. I don't know if you all remember how small it used to be. Obviously, the green was bigger than the amount of turf that's in this picture right here. But I think that's what you're looking at for new putting surface versus old putting surface. And Brendan knows these numbers are real soon, but I'm guessing that one got almost twice as big. You know, we made the decision to convert what used to be a little short grass apron into putting surface so that you can get hole locations way up here in the front left corner, way up in front just beyond the bunkers, expand in the back left and soften the slope considerably so you can get a hole location back in this corner where it used to be too steep to do that. And there used to be a pretty strong slope coming off this bunker that, you know, the ball, if you were in that bunker, the ball would race away and you really couldn't get a hole location past the center of the green. Whereas now we've lowered that a bit and really tried to chase hole locations close to the bunkers. And that's what we're trying to do with a lot of the green expansions. This is a great example. When you look at the old green here and you see where the bunkers were, where this cursor is about as close to any bunker as you could put the hole location previously. So basically, if you just aim for the center of the green, you were within an easy putt of the hole. Now we push the greens way out. If you put a hole location right here, you're a hell of a lot closer to both of these two bunkers than you ever could be before. So you were surrounded by bunkers, but you really couldn't get the hole locations anywhere near them. And now we've created the opportunity to put hole locations in places where they're really difficult to get at, which is going to make the golf course harder for better players when it's set up for tournaments, when it's set up to be difficult. But at the same time, the green is twice the size it used to be. So that green's a lot easier to hit for the handicap player than it ever was before. 40%, 80% bigger, Brendan? I see you shaking your head. It's a lot bigger. It's an easier target to hit.
I wouldn't say it's that much bigger, but I agree with what you're saying. Like when you convert the approach to bent grass that's greens height, you know, I would say I'd feel more comfortable with, like, I think I'm getting all the GPS numbers next week, but I would think it's more like 30%. I don't think it's as much as people think. You're incorporating the approach in the back too, but it is a lot bigger. And strategically, as a greenkeeper, it's a heck of a lot more fun to do course setup on it.
Yeah, you've got a lot more options for where you're going to put the hole in the mountain.
Well, plus the tee's
With the tee,
underrated.
too.
The tee is underrated. The tee really helps you out.
Yeah, that was another thing we did on that hole, is obviously convert what used to be several smaller tee boxes into one massive tee box, to the point where I think the flexibility for positioning the tees can probably vary by 25 or maybe.
Well, we can go all the way from the forward tee at 97 yards to all the way back, which I think was 157.
Wow. And to me,
Yes.
club where you're playing the same holes every day, to have that sort of variety and how they're set up is a huge asset.
I agree.
Especially on par threes, particularly. So let me backtrack just a second here. Apart from the bunkers and the greens and green grass, the one thing that stands out to me in this picture, again, is all the asphalt. You go back to this picture of the 8th hole, look over on the right-hand side there. I was always seeing asphalt. There it is. Look at that. You've got a tee with a beautiful little creek running next to it, a gorgeous golf hole, and all I could see was asphalt. We got that out of there. Now it looks like that. We obviously relocated the cart path to the right of the tees, behind the green where it's much less conspicuous. And now you stand on that tee and all you're seeing is golf. To me, that's a huge improvement. Before we move on to the rest of the holes on the front nine, do we have any questions about these holes? Not the front nine, sorry, the clubhouse nine. Let's move on.
No, move on.
Yeah, I think all the questions kind of got answered as we went here. So.
Okay. 1, 3, and 4 is where we went next. You can see some things have changed in these pictures. Start right there. I don't know if y'all remember the big bunch of trees that used to be between 2 and 3 as well. But here are the trees between 1 and 3. That was a big project. And I know there were some concerns that taking those trees out would be easier. Golfers from the first tee could blast it anywhere and not have trees in their way anymore. Oh, that's beautiful. So we had a bunch of space between those two holes. And going back to Brendan's question about bunker style earlier, you know, we did take inspiration from the British links. We also took inspiration from places like this, which is Myopia Hunt Club, north of Boston, north and east of Boston. You know, Myopia's got some beautiful bunkers. This is the 9th hole. The bunkers are kind of dug down into the ground like thumbprints, like you just pressed your finger in the clay and they're these deep little pits. Not really anything flashed up about them. This is Woodhall Spa, the 5th hole at Woodhall Spa, a great golf course in England. More of the same bunker style, just excavated pits. This is Walter Travis playing out of his bunker on the 18th green at Garden City. Those are our inspiration for some of the work we did between the 1st and the 3rd holes, and around the golf course, really. You know, sunken pits, nothing really flashed up, no concerted effort to let you know that they're there. There's nothing blinking at you in neon lights saying, look out, I'm a bunker over here. And to my point earlier about making things kind of vague and introducing luck and uncertainty, you know, there's still a lot of open space over there between these two holes. There's a lot of room to find your golf ball. I'd say probably 10%, 5%, 10% of that space is sand now. Most of it's turf. So if you block your tee shot on the right, you've still got a really good chance of finding your ball in the turf. But we put a few nasty little bunkers over there, just enough to make you think. These are between 2 and 3. So we've got a bunch of space on these holes. But if you happen to find one of those bunkers, you're going to remember it. So we don't want to penalize you on every shot. You know, if you miss a shot in the 1st hole, we don't want to penalize you necessarily all the time. But every once in a while, especially for better players, if you're going to be aggressive, you're going to find the nasty lie, and the next time you're going to play, you're going to hedge a little bit to the left. So the bunkers matter again. You know, deep, nasty things that are just excavated badly.
Brian, can I just interrupt? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
You know, there's some of the bunkers that are real deep, like say number 8 green side. Did you ever imagine putting steps in them? And if not, why?
I don't have a problem with steps. I like steps, frankly. I think they add character. I think they're cool.
So you think that's something that we might have to look at like in a year or two after we see how play goes? You wouldn't be offended to put, you know, a set of, you know, steps like that. I mean, we're looking long term. I know there's some questions about 9 blue that we're going to add some steps, you know, between the cart path and 9 through the fescue, but how we didn't do anything between the blue tee on 9 and the white tee on 8, that we just wanted people to walk through the fescue, that we wanted to make it look natural. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and going back to steps, I don't have an issue with them. And I think the way you're proceeding is the right way to do it. Rather than adding a bunch of steps right now, I think you see how they play for a little while, and it's something you can easily add down the road.
But you could see how Blake did like number 8. He did put it, if you're standing behind the green, he gives you a low line. Blake always gave you an area to walk in and walk out, I felt. Didn't you feel that way, Blake?
Yeah, ideally for those smaller pits that are deeper, there's only one point of access, but at least trying to give you one point of access where ideally you wouldn't need steps.
Yeah, you did that on number 4 too, right side.
Number
Yeah,
4,
right
number 1,
too.
there's an area to get in. Yeah.
Yeah, we're very aware of that. And you can see that here on this picture to the left of 3. You know, this little low spot intentionally is easy access. You know, and I think did we build one in the back here as well somewhere, Blake?
I don't think so much in the back, but I think in front. And I think some people have just missed it, that they don't see that there has been, like I like to say, is there's been walking paths added to some of these deep bunkers. Maybe we're just not communicating, or they're just not seeing it as well. Because I was always impressed with what Blake especially did with those bunkers, that he gave you easy in and out if you looked for it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, the bunkers are still brand new to a lot of your folks, and they haven't learned them yet. But look around a little bit if you're looking for a place to get in on the bunkers. I think there's one on every bunker. But if steps are necessary down the road, I'm not opposed to it. But we did make an effort to allow access points. Moving on with the bunker look a little bit. Again, bunker right, bunker left on your old 3rd hole. No longer bunker right, bunker left, and something very different on the left side of the hole. Here's the 9th. Just continuing on with the look of the new bunkers. Obviously, this is to the right of the 1st green. Don't miss over there. That's another green that got considerably bigger. I think we've got great hole locations in this back right portion now, and even closer to the bunkers on the right. So that those bunkers can really be in play depending on where the hole's built. We're going to put the hole that day. There's Mike and bunker. So same thing, we had a lot of space to fill between the second hole and the third hole. And rather than adding a bunch of bunkers in that space again, we tried to do something a little different. So this is what your old second hole used to look like again, bunker right, bunker left. Again, we took inspiration from, this is Myopia Hunt Club again. Myopia is one of the great turn-of-the-century golf courses in America. It was maybe the first great golf course in the country. Hasn't changed a whole lot since those days, but they used a bunch of above ground stuff in addition to the deep sunken bunkers that I showed you earlier. And some of this is practical. You know, I would bet that if you stuck a shovel in those mountains, you're going to find some rocks that they dug up in construction. And rather than hauling them off somewhere, hauling them off site, hauling to a dump, they decided we're going to stop digging in these rocks to build bunkers, and we're going to build above ground features. This is Royal Melbourne. Doesn't look like that anymore. One of the great courses of the world. They had some funky stuff back in the day. Quite honestly, I don't know where Eddington is, but I like this picture with the window on the sheet. Blake and I would go to Tired Hands for dinner virtually every night. We enjoyed their beer. They had great tacos, and we would look up crazy shit that we could build at Lanark the next day. and our research led us to things like these, the Alpines and the Pyrenees. I don't know where those were. I'm certain they no longer exist, but I would love to see them somewhere. We didn't go quite that crazy, but we did get inspired by this one. I can't for the life of me understand how that was built over 100 years ago and how it was maintained, and it didn't last very long. It'll surprise some of you to know that this is from Shinnecock Hills, which is one of the best and most elegant golf courses in the country. You know, we didn't just look at golf. We looked at military. We looked at all different kinds of inspiration. This is some of the crazy stuff we built. This was a Sunday afternoon when I was all by myself out there. This is what it led to. Brendan being very disgruntled, who didn't appreciate my hard work and decided to bug Brendan on a Sunday afternoon and tell him you had to keep me in check. But that was just Blake and I playing around to see if we could recreate some of those things. You all know we softened it into this. This is how your second hole turned out. We've still got a couple bunkers over on the left side there. A little teeny tiny one. I'd love to know if anybody's been in that one yet, which sits just about in this area.
I saw someone in it last week.
Nice. Good.
She wasn't happy.
Good. Took the bunker away front right, did some weird stuff over there. Where the bunker's left of the green, the little trench short of the green, and the little guy I was just talking about. Here's the right side, the space between 2 and 3. It's probably caught some of you off guard, but this is inspired by those pictures I just showed you. And part of it was like Myopia Hunt, they were bearing rocks. One of the things we did throughout this project, which you probably aren't aware of, the golf construction process creates a lot of junk, a lot of trash material. A lot of sod that we've stripped that had to be put somewhere. Some rocks, just a lot of debris that has to go somewhere. You don't want to pay it to haul it off site. That's expensive. You've got a teeny tiny property. You don't have a big dump to relocate it to. So we built stuff out of it. You know, rather than building more bunkers that would create more material, we decided to use the excess material from the berry pits. You can see over on the right side of the picture here, there's an excavator in a truck. You know, there was a berry pit over in that corner. There were 3 or 4 of them scattered around the property beyond that one. I think there were 5 or 6 in total. You know, we put all the trash in there. Those berry pits generated a lot of material. We needed something to do with it. So we built this stuff. It's practical. It saved a lot of money. And we created something that I don't think anybody else in the Philadelphia area has, and something I don't see these days. It's a different kind of hazard. You know, bunkers have gotten really expensive to build, and because you all expect them to be perfect all the time, they're really expensive to maintain. So because you've been complaining about the bunkers and the lies you're getting in the bunkers, we did this to you instead. We gave you something different. So I hope you all enjoy this. I'm very curious to come back and see it. You know, I posted some pictures of the progress of the work we were doing on Instagram and Twitter, and Blake did the same, Brendan did the same. A lot of people are talking about this stuff. A lot of people know what Lanark is now, have heard of Lanark because of this stuff. I mean, y'all hosted a PGA championship 60 years ago. This is what people are talking about when they talk about Lanark. This is something different. And that was one of the goals of the project, was to give you an identity in one of the great Gulf cities in the world, really. We wanted you to stand out and be something different, have something different, have something that reflects the fact that you've been playing golf on that site since 1895. You know, the golf course we started with a year ago didn't feel like it'd been there since 1895. And I think this stuff helps that. You know, this helps it feel like an old golf course. And I think everything we're doing out there is trying to help you feel your age and also separate you from what everyone else has in Philadelphia.
Brian, do you think, I think the questions I've gotten, there's two questions I've gotten in the past is, why remove the left side fairway bunker, which you and I and Blake and Chris Wilkinson, we talked about when we were making that decision and with the green committee. And then the second part of it was, did you feel like when you put the mounds in with the trees, even though you moved a bunch of them, where the trees and the mounds are, do you feel that it's almost too penal, or are you okay with that? So it's a two-part question.
I think those two go together. I mean, sure, this stuff can be penal. Again, it's, you know, I think they're steep enough where, you know, some balls will hit them and bounce off of them, most likely. You know, they're pretty firm and they're pretty steep. So some balls are going to get stuck on there. Some balls are going to end up against them. And that's bad luck. And it's not going to happen to you all often. But at the same time, we took the bunker out on the left side of the hole to give you a bunch of room out to the left. So you don't have to aim anywhere near these things if you don't want to. You've got all the room in the world. I mean, let me go back. This is a big amount of space. I mean, ideally you're not aiming towards the third fairway, but from here to the property line is massive. And the work we did takes up about this much of it. You've got a bunch of room to the left to play around them if you want to avoid them. So we put something, again, going back to the bunkers that we're building, the things we're building are severe, but we've also given you a bunch of room to play away from them, a bunch of room to play around them, and a bunch of room to avoid trouble if you don't want to get anywhere near it. You know, this is a long hole. And to reach this hole in 2 shots, you should have to hit 2 good shots. And for a lot of players, that means you're going to have to flirt with the corner of the dog leg. So we wanted to do something in the corner of the dog leg that made you think twice about being aggressive. You know, we put the trees out to encourage you to swing freely, but at the same time, there's stuff over there on the right. If you're going to take the shortcut and you block your shot a little bit, you might end up in trouble. You've got all the room on the left to play away. And, you know, if you play too safely, it might be a 3-shot hole for you. But that's golf. You know, that's strategic golf. How brave do you want to be? Do you want to dare severe hazards? And if you don't, you've got a bunch of room to play safely around them, but it might take you another shot to get to the green. So that's why we created more space on the left. Take that fairway bunker out just to give you more room. And, you know, that ties into the mound we built in the approach too. You know, for those players that do choose to play safely out to the left, you've got something to think about in your second shot again. So it's not just an open, easy, long second shot into the green anymore if you're going to play away from the trouble on the right. Moving on to the, let's see, 18th.
Everyone's going to love that picture.
That's a beautiful swing. I like that finish. That's like Arnie Palmer or Chi-Chi. Your 18th is a cool little hole. It's a fantastic match play hole. You know, we'll talk a bit about the back 9 in a second, but one of the things I love about your back 9, even though it's kind of short, is that it's full of holes like this that are half par holes. Difficult par 3s, short par 4s, really long par 4s, and reachable par 5s. And to finish on 16, well, go 15, you know, potentially drivable par 4, 16 reachable par 5, 17 a tiny bit nasty par 3, and then again 18 a drivable par 4 is a brilliant finish to me. And it's a shame, you know, Lanark is well known for hosting the first stroke play PGA championship. This would have been an awesome match play golf course because anything can happen on those last 4 holes. And it's a great member course for that reason. I love your 18th hole. We didn't change it a whole lot. You know, one of the major things we did, obviously,
Not to interrupt, I'm sorry, just because the question came in before you get to the green portion. Can you guys maybe just talk about the cart path kind of situation around the tee, and maybe why we chose to do it that way, and what might happen in the future? Brendan, maybe if you want to chime in on that. I know there's been some questions about sort of the cart path looping behind the green, or I'm sorry, behind the 18th tee, and maybe why that was the choice.
I think right now the cart path that's going to the forward tee was originally thought to be torn out. It was just, it was what you can see in this picture. It was just something that, because of what happened with the pandemic, there was a point where we just had to stop doing construction. So it's more of a temporary thing, but a lot of people don't understand, and it's been poorly communicated, that you know, that you have to, there's sometimes cart paths are meant a lot for greenkeepers and not for golf. That there's ways that we have to get on property and get other places. So, you know, but the cart path, I think that a lot of people are asking for is by that 14. The plan long-term is to pull it out.
Yeah, I mean, one of the goals when getting rid of asphalt is, you know, to Brendan's point, you need some out there. You need some paths. And the more you can share the paths you need, the better. So the solution was, you know, to get the traffic from behind the 17th green over to the left side of the 18th tee so they can share the existing path that has to be to the left of the first green.
Correct. And the other thing too is that you have to remember, for an agricultural reason, we're stuck in the middle of the property. We have to find a way to get to the clubhouse during frost and thunderstorms where the ground's flooded, that we need to be able to get there without tearing everything up with tractors and carts and so on and so forth. So cart paths have a duality with them. So I know it's not the best thing and we don't like them, but gosh, Brian, Blake, how many cart paths did we take out? I mean, we've taken out a ton of square footage.
Yeah. I think it's good to segue into the cart path on 18, and I know that it's continues to be a question, and I don't think fully resolved as to where that will go in the long term. But a lot of the questions is, can we run it up the right side of the property? And I think, you know, one of the questions is, could we go on the other side, to the right side of the black fence? And I don't think there's a great, I'll let you guys chime in there. But I know it was talked about initially, but with that, as close as that is to the range, the danger of where those balls come from, I don't think there's a great solution, you know, on that right side that would actually work. Dump you out up into the parking lot up there, and I don't, you know, we'd have to probably do a lot of work to even get to that point with where our patio is, and driving range and everything. But go ahead if you guys have any other thoughts there.
No, there is no great solution, unfortunately. Carts have to get from here to there, and you know, there's no room to run carts behind the green alongside the clubhouse. That's too small back there. That path is too narrow. So
I mean, you can't you can't connect the cart path to the center circle. I mean, there's no room between the stone wall that holds up the range and the stone wall that holds up the patio. And you're driving right up into the range. I think the other question, Brian, that we've gotten talked about is the tree that's on the left, the cedar, because of its kneeing and stuff. Can you talk about the logic about removing that tree, please?
Yeah,
Even though I cut it down.
Yeah. We need a current. Well, might have a current picture, but yeah, there's a neat little stream over there you can't see. Primarily, you know, I like that stream, and I like that it's a feature of these two golf holes, the first and the 18th, and you can't see it from this tee. So that's one of the big reasons. You know, I have zero love for, you know, I love the knees. I think they're really cool. I wish they didn't come with a huge above ground tree attached to them, but those are some of my least favorite trees in golf because they're not great golf trees. So I didn't really see any redeeming value to that tree whatsoever. I'd much rather see the stream. And the knees are probably still there. You probably didn't go through the trouble of taking that out. So, yeah, don't love that tree.
Sorry, we did keep some of the kneeing, but we took a lot of it out. The kneeing helps with erosion control. I know there's been questions about the creeks. The creeks is a different phase. The creeks are both U.S. water, they're U.S. federal protected, they are at Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, they are at Delaware County Conservatory. I've already met with the EPA. Dave Atkinson's been great about helping me to find a look for the creeks, but the creeks are not in this phase. And it's a really delicate situation. We technically are not allowed to really do anything without permitting, and permitting sometimes takes upwards to 3 to 4 years to get.
Yeah, I mean, Brendan touches on a good point there. That, you know, we did a lot of work last fall. We're going to do a lot of work this fall, hopefully. That doesn't mean once we're done with the second phase of work that everything's finished and we don't have to make any more progress. You know, I hope to have a long relationship with the club and with everyone there, and this will be a continual journey of improvement that will not end once a lot of this heavy lifting has been done. On to your grade 18th. The first thing we did, you know, these busy mowing lines, I think this mowing line here on the right side is an old tree that used to live in this part of the property, if I'm not mistaken. But you know, there's no great explanation for why the fairway line does that on the right side or even this on the left side. So we tried to simplify that and just create a lot more space. You can see how much bigger the fairway got. Going back here, you know, if you look closely, you had four greenside bunkers. So we wanted to retain that. We didn't want to change that look all that much. But they spread pretty much all the way across the green here. If you happen to block your tee shot over to the right, you know, not only were you stuck behind the green, but you had bunkers in your way, or stuck behind a tree, but you had bunkers in your way as well. There really was no great option to get onto the greens from there. So one of the things we did, in addition to making the fairway wider, much wider, was to tweak the bunkers a little bit. You know, this right-hand bunker right here used to live just about over here. And you had a skinny little approach, a token approach that ran around the right side. But if I could see you all right now, I'd ask anyone to raise their hands if they'd ever used that approach. Hopefully that's different now. We shifted the bunkers over. You can see how much broader that approach is right now. So if you do block your tee shot to the right, or even intentionally aim to the right, you've got a lot more space to try and run your ball under this tree, up the bank, and onto the green from there. You've got hope of getting on the green if you get a bad tee shot. To me, that's fun. You know, it's not an easy shot from over there, but you have hope of recovery. You know, you're in the fairway. You've got to look at the green. You've got an opportunity to shot. So I think we retained the old look of the field, but improve the playability a little bit by giving you more space to play both off the tee. There's more room to play up the right, and you've also got a shot in the green from there if you need it. There's your picture without the tree. Now you can see they put a little stream. So that wraps up the clubhouse side. Anyone have any questions before we briefly talk about what we're going to do on the other side of Steel Road? We'll move on.
I think we kind of covered everything just looking through. Just one quick question for Brendan here on some drainage. I know it's been a problem since, you know, it's just a wet area there in front of 9T, you know, by the creek. It's just a low area there.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Chris. I know there's been questions. There's water that's trapped along the new car path. Again, that was a construction we'd hoped to have done earlier. Once the pandemic kicked in, it got pushed back. What happens is we're built to maintain the golf course during the season, really not to do too much construction. But in the next few weeks, we're looking to try to, if the weather agrees with us, to put a drain in. Worst case in the fall. But we just really got caught with the pandemic. And we also, you know, I have to give I got to tip my hat to Blake and Brian. A lot of people don't realize we had almost 15 inches of rain during our construction. That is an absorbent amount of rain. I mean, we typically would get maybe 5 or 6 inches. And they were yet able to make all the bunkers and do a lot of construction. And we still were able to complete most of it. But It will be addressed.
All right, go for it, Pat.
Right, so we're going across the road. Starting with, all right, the visuals are a little different here, but we'll do what we can. Starting with your 5th hole, which I really happen to like. It's a long hole. Essentially, we're going to take out a bunch of bunkers and probably add some of the mounding, you know, on any project we ever do. For Tom Doak particularly, we're starting from scratch. It usually, you know, we've got an idea of what we want to do going into every project, but it usually takes us 2 or 3 holes before we hit our stride and we find a style of bunkering or, you know, an aesthetic that we latch onto and we run with for the rest of the project. And that was no different at Lanark last year. What we were doing evolved as we were doing it, and that's part of why Blake and I are on the ground shaping everything that we did, so that we can be creative, that we don't have a set of plans going into the project and we're stuck to those. You know, we appreciate the freedom that we're given to be creative and to find the best solutions and to come up with cool things as we're working. So we've got a bit of a better idea what we're going to do across the road, and stylistically we've established a theme on the clubhouse side of the road that we're going to carry across to the other side, and that'll translate to some of the mounding that you see between 2 and 3. Similar style of bunkering. We'll do a lot of that stuff on this side of the road as well. The 5th hole is not changing a lot. You know, it's another one with bunker right, bunker left at the green. We're going to eliminate the front left green side bunker and add some mounding over there and broaden out the approach a little bit. We'll replace some of the bunkers with mounds through the fairway, but it's not going to change considerably. You know, I think we're going to take out the bunker behind the green so that if you're long on that hole, which is appropriate for a long par 5, you're not going to be hung up in a bunker almost at green level. You're going to drop down 5 or 6 feet, and you're going to have a tough recovery from behind the green, but you're not going to be in sand anymore. Moving on to the 6th, pretty dramatic change here. You know, the other side of the road isn't nearly as tight as the clubhouse side, but there's still places you're constrained for space, and particularly on the 15th hole, which is adjacent to the 6th, obviously, and the 12th hole. The relationship between the 12th tees, the 15th hole, and the 6th hole right now, everything's pretty tight. But you've got a bunch of space to the right of the existing 6th hole that we want to take advantage of. So essentially, we're going to take the 6th hole and just shift it about 15, 20 yards to the right. That's going to involve a little bit of tree clearing up the right side. But you'll see in a little bit, it's going to create a lot more space for the 15th hole to shift to the left and create a little more space for the 12th tees as well. So generally, all 3 of those holes are going to breathe a little more than they do now, just by taking advantage of some space on the 6th hole. We've drawn in a kind of a big, long ridge mound feature that'll connect the 6th hole over to the 15th, which we'll get to in a second. But essentially, that hole's not going to change a whole lot. The green's going to be in the same spot. The tees won't change a whole lot. I think we're going to expand the green a little bit. Again, get rid of bunker right, bunker left. That's 6.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, Brian.
Yes, sir.
It's
Sirs?
Tom. We're still seeing, most of us are still seeing a picture of 18. Are you going through other?
I'm sorry. Let's see. I am. I don't know why that's not coming up. It was working earlier. Everyone's still looking at 18?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still seeing the PowerPoint.
All right, let me see if I can just get rid of that. Sorry, let's see here. All right, this should help.
There you go.
That work? All right,
There you go.
sorry. Let me backtrack to the 5th. So the 5th isn't changing a whole lot. We're going to redo some things at the green end, eliminate the front left bunker, eliminate a couple bunkers in the fairway, replacing them with some mounding and that sort of thing. The 6th is a bigger change. You can see everything in the hatched lines down at the bottom here will be the expansion of the fairway. We'll be eliminating fairway up on the left-hand side, essentially just shifting the whole 12, 15 yards to the right to create more space for adjacent 15 up above. Number 7, To me, number 7 is made by the hill in the fairway and the little waterway in front of the green. And the bunkers don't add much to that hole for me, particularly the fairway bunkers. You know, better players aren't really thinking about those fairway bunkers. They're trying to hit it as far as they can so they can get down the hill and have an easy wedge shot into the greens from a relatively flat lie. So we're going to eliminate those bunkers, expand the fairway considerably off the tee, provide a little more space down the bottom of the hill. And what I'm thinking now, we've drawn in a few bunkers behind the green where you've got existing bunkers now. Frankly, I'm debating whether those are needed. I think it's a beautiful little piece of topography and it's got a neat stream in front of the green. And I think just emphasizing those two features without any bunkers is an option there. We're talking about expanding the approach, short and right of the green for shorter players, handicap players that can't hit their drive down the hill. You know, if they're playing from up top, they've got a chance to land their ball short and run it onto the green. You know, that doesn't affect better players. It's a short enough hole for good players that they're hitting a short iron in anyway. They don't need that. But that's going to help some of the shorter, weaker players. That's the thinking there. From there, we jump ahead to the 11th, which I think has the makings of a fantastic hole. One of my favorite greens on the golf course, one that's really different from all the others, but a great green. Some nice topography, which we're going to accentuate with a little bit of bunkering off the tee, most likely, and tweak the bunkering here, short right of the green. Do something a little different left of the green, but generally create a little more space off the tee by eliminating the bunkers off the left. And just simplify the hole and really do what we can to emphasize the topography there and show off that great green.
Brian, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I know there's going to be questions. The plan is to remove the tree on number 7 that's up by the green. And what's the logic about removing the tree that's by the creek on the right side by 7 green?
Yeah, it's a nice tree. To me, it's a nice tree in the wrong place. You know, again, better players who are playing well, that tree doesn't affect them. It's really penal, particularly with bunkers surrounding the green for the lesser player, the handicap player, the shorter player. To me, it's affecting the wrong person. You know, it's just making what can be a hard hole even harder for handicap players, and shouldn't affect the better player all that much. You know, being honest, I think it's going to make that hole a little bit easier. I hope everybody's stroke average comes down a fair bit on that hole because I think it's really penal for weaker players. I don't think it's going to get a lot easier for better players, and I think we're doing enough for better players around the golf course elsewhere to make it harder for them if it needs to be. So I'm not concerned about that. I think the tree makes the hole harder. I don't think it makes it better. I think it's going to be a better hole.
It's not in the best of shape anyway. The tree's kind of been, it's more at the end of its life cycle than it is in the beginning, to be quite honest with you. It's not, it's a garbage silver maple, to be honest with you.
I agree. On the 12th, here's where I was going to jump back and forth a little bit. Excuse me while this will just take a second. Sorry. Let's see. I've got a few pictures in, oh, wrong place. So again, we are taking inspiration from, share. All right, I think I figured this out this time. Are you seeing the Lanark?
Yeah, you just switched over.
Okay, cool. So your 12th hole. We are, again, going to take some inspiration from a great golf course in England. This is Swinley Forest. I'll try and get you a bigger picture here. Sorry. Excuse my technical skills. It's not my forte. So, found inspiration for a bunch of stuff on the clubhouse side of the road, which I explained. Off the road, this is our inspiration for your 12th hole, which I think is a great little par 3. You all know how severe that green is. So like the 8th on the clubhouse side of the road, the 12th is the one green that we're going to tear apart completely and redo. We have no intention of making it an easy hole. It's still going to be a severe green, but you are really limited in your hole locations right now. And we think we can do some subtle things to really expand locations, make the green a little bit bigger, but also make the unpinnable portions of your green a lot more usable going forward. And this is kind of the aesthetic that we have in mind. You know, this all popped into my head because of the steep bank, short right of the green. I'm undecided whether we're going to put bunkers behind back left of the green or not, but I love some of this cool little mounting around the screen. So that's the 8th hole at Swinley Forest. That's what we're thinking about for your 12th hole. I'm going to jump back to the other screen for a second. Move on to the 13th. We've got a few ideas here, mostly relating to the tees. I'll come back to that in a second. At the green, we're going to eliminate the front left bunker just to create a little more imbalance there, do something different with the bunkering off the tee, and just create more width off the tee. You know, one of the things, your golf course is really intimate, and it's a great walk. And so many of the greens roll right off the green onto the next tee. The 11th and the 12th is a perfect example. This is the one horribly awkward spot on this side of the property. You know, you're essentially walking off the 11th green, playing the 12th hole, and backtracking nearly the entirety of the 12th hole to go to the back tee on 13. That's just weird, you know, and that's been done to make what's already a relatively short 9 holes as long as it can be, at the expense of an awkward walk and a hole that doesn't really function all that well from that distance anyway. You know, for a lot of players, if you're playing from the back tee especially, it's a bomb to get up top beyond the bunker where you can see the green. And for most players to be hitting into the bank of the hill and facing a semi-blind shot to that green is not all that much fun. So I think we'll leave a tiny back tee where your existing back tee is, in case you have an event and you want to stretch it to its maximum length. But I think that hole's better shorter. You know, it's right now it's kind of that awkward distance where it's, you know, it's not quite drivable. So, you know, there's no great incentive to hit a driver because you most likely can't get to where you can see anyway for a lot of players. But I think if we shorten it up, we make it more tempting. You know, we're going to put this big bunker over here and there's a bunch of space above it. And if we shift the tees up a little bit, and especially, we've talked about adding a tee just off the left side of the 12th green. A really short walk would change the angle a little bit. The hole would be quite a bit shorter, but it would bring this flat part of the fairway into play and maybe even let some players take a crack at the green. So shifting the tees around, you know, I think the hole has been messed up by trying to make it as long as possible. And that walk is so horribly awkward that we want to try and do something and fix the walk there and make the hole function better by being shorter. So you're going to lose a little yardage on the card, but I think you're going to have a more enjoyable golf hole as a result. This is a fantastic golf hole. 14th is a phenomenal hole. I don't know how many of you watched the match a couple weeks ago between Ricky Fowler and Dustin Johnson and Rory McIlroy and Matthew Wolff that was held at Seminole Golf Club. This hole has always reminded me of the great 4th hole at Seminole, which is one of the great par 4s in America. This is a beauty. You know, you've got a few too many trees out there right now. But what I've drawn here is very much inspired by the 4th hole at Seminole, a great Donald Ross hole. So we're not going to do much this one. We're going to widen the fairway a little bit in spots, expand the green a little bit, particularly in the back left, tweak the bunkering to reflect the new style we've introduced. But this one doesn't need a whole lot of love. We might add a few tees, shift the angle of the tee shot a little bit to the left. But that's a beauty. We're not messing with that one a whole lot. Moving on to 15. We are going to go back to the UK for just a second to one of my favorite golf courses in the world, a place called North Berwick in Scotland. What you're looking at here is hard to make out. A lot of Scottish courses It's hard to tell what's fairway, what's green, what's rough. That's my brilliant sketch of what you're looking at. Tee on the left, this is about a 360-yard hole, if I remember right. Plenty of room in the fairway. There's a beautiful beach off the left that you can play from if you happen to hook your tee shot. You can see where the green is. It's a long, really narrow green. There's a big dune up here behind the green. And this black line right there is that wall. The idea is the closer you drive to the wall, the more you're playing down the length of the green. You got a bunch of space. You play away from the wall, you're playing across the wall to a shallow green that's got a dune on the backside. So the green is wedged in, and the green's probably 10 or 12 yards deep, wedged in between a wall and a dune. So the closer you drive it to the wall, the more you take on the wall, and therefore the beach, the better your angle is into the green. A fantastic hole, one of my favorites. We want to bring that to your 15th hole. Here's what we're going to do. Talked earlier about shifting the 6th hole up to the right, which is going to create more space for the 15th hole to slide a little bit to the left, which will create a little more space for your 12th tees, a little less pressure for people driving out that far. Right now you've got all this fairway bunkering here. That basically tells you either lay up short of it in the skinny little fairway, or just bomb away and see where you end up. And that encourages people to play over towards the 12th tee. So what we're doing here, we're going to introduce this long ridge, berm. We'll see what it ends up being. That runs all the way from the 6th fairway and affects play on the left side of the 6th hole, up the left side of the 15th, cross in front of the green. The green will sit tight behind it. We'll probably do some bunkering or some mounding behind the green back there.
Can you make it easier for me to maintain?
Absolutely. That is our number one goal with everything we're doing. You know that. But that's
we had a one on 15 the other day.
is that right?
Yeah. That would be about
It's whoever that was.
John Lally,
Congratulations, John.
my club champ from 2 years ago.
Do you see, Brian, what do you see the height, all joking aside? First things first, do you think it's going to make the hole easier? And number two, do you see it, the mounds, do you see it more like number 2 mounds on the right side, or do you see it more a subtle mound, or will it be something that maybe oscillates, in depth and in height?
I think it's going to be a little bit of both. I should clarify that we're not going to build a wall at Lanark.
Yeah, thanks.
But unless we find a lot of rock.
Breaker right there,
Yeah.
Stonewall. That one would be hard to sell.
You wouldn't have to mow it though, Brendan. You wouldn't have to mow it.
I think this portion of what we'll call the wall will be similar to the stuff between 2 and 3. Pretty bold. Something that you have to think twice about flirting with. As it continues across the fairway, we've got it shown in fairway here. Across the fairway next to the green, it's going to be much softer, ideally mowable as short grass in the fairway. Just a small little speed bump that you can tuck a whole location behind, and you've got to play a little shot that negotiates that thing, but mowable as short grass. So you can try and run it up. You can putt over it. You can run a little 5-iron up and over it, or you can hit your wedge over the top of it. But giving you a bunch of options up there. Is it going to be easier? I don't know. It's going to be a lot more fun. It's going to be really cool. Might be a little easier. Might be a little harder. I don't know yet. But it's going to be better. That one I'm excited about. This is 16. Another really good hole. This is one of my favorite greens on the golf course, like the 11th on this green. We're not doing anything up there apart from just expanding it just a little bit around the perimeter. 2 trees to take out along the way there. Maybe some park paths to clean up at some point, and just rearranging the bunkering a little bit. For the second shot here, this is a short par 5. For the second shot, we want to do something to make you think about your second shot. Some reason to, some incentive to hit a really good drive. And if you don't, you got to think about what you're going to do with your second shot. So we'll do a combination of mounding and bunkering, probably similar to what's in front of the second hole, second green. Nothing terribly penal, but something that you might find a bit of trouble if you get unlucky.
Brian, do you see that maybe some of these bunkers that look like they have sand and drawings could end up being like what you did on number 2, where you and Blake were like, you know what, let's just grass them instead?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. It can be anything. I think there's probably a little more sand shown on this plan that we'll end up building. I think that may have been the case on the other side of the street as well. But yeah, I think we'll try to introduce a bunch of different looks and just try to find new stuff that you haven't seen before. I think that takes us to the end. Let me see if I have anything left here. There's Blake. Everyone thank Blake and his sweet pants for building all stuff out there. They're the dogs I miss, and I understand there's a new puppy that we can't wait to meet this fall. Again, thank you all. You've been a fantastic client, and you know the one thing we value most in our line of work is to be given the opportunity to express ourselves and to build things that we really love building and absolutely cannot wait to get back to play. And you guys have given us that opportunity. And I know Blake feels the same way, but we're really looking forward to getting back to Lanark, hopefully sooner than October. I'd love to play it if I could, but we can't get back and play it, and can't wait to get to work across the road. We think we've got a bunch of great ideas in store for y'all. And
Brian, we did 4,100 rounds in May, so I don't think we're going to have any room to get you out there, but you know, we might be able to squeeze you in August or September.
all right. I'm not picky. I'll get up early. I'll go out as a single first.
Yeah, exactly.
Bring people.
Well, we appreciate you guys taking the time to come out to talk to everybody tonight, and appreciate everybody that participated. We're excited for the fall, and you know, can't wait to see what you guys do on the other side. So everybody have a great night, and thanks again for coming out.
My pleasure. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Brian and Blake. See you in the fall.